Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this webinar. We're really excited to introduce you to a new feature that we have just announced. I think it was just last week. So before we begin, just to introduce myself and also Or, who is on the line as well. So my name is Itan, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Intezer, which I founded around 3 years ago. But before that, I really came from a more technical background where I led an incident response team for the government. And most of my daily job was within the malware analysis field, incident response, forensics, and so on and so forth. And also, I have Or on the line as well. So, Or, can you say maybe a few words about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Or, and I'm really happy to be here in this webinar. So in my background, I'm a software developer and product manager from the IDF and several other companies like CyberArk. Here at Intezer, I'm director of product, responsible for the product roadmap, working with customers and R&D. And we are really happy, all the team, to introduce you the new feature here today. So I'm sure it will be interesting.
Cool. Thank you so much, Or, also for joining me today in this webinar. So let's begin. So our agenda for today is, the main thing is that we really want to show you our new feature live so you can see an actual demonstration of it. And this would take the most part of our presentation today. But before that, we'll discuss just briefly about what are the challenges today in security operations, mostly for large organizations, and the reasons that led us to create this new and exciting feature. In addition, we'll just recap and introduce you a bit to our underlying technology we call genetic malware analysis. The reason why I'm saying recap is because I saw the attendee list, and most people on the line today already know about Intezer. I'm familiar with our products more or less, so that's where we're just gonna brief you a bit about genetic malware analysis again. And lastly, we're going to talk about endpoint analysis, the new feature, how does it work? We're going to show you a few diagrams for the broader integrations and architecture so you'll understand how it fits into really the broader picture here in an organization. And yes, we're really excited to start. So to begin, speaking about the challenge today in the modern security operations center. So as you know, in the past few years, we see a very big change and evolution from how the security operations was in the past, right? If in the past nobody has detected anything, right? Or saying it very bluntly, but it was very, very hard to identify suspicious activity in the past. Now, there's such a big adoption of EDR systems, modern detection and response systems. So now with these new solutions, there are also a new kind of problems as well. So the one thing that we heard from many, many different clients is that even though they have a very good EDR in place or some sort of a next-gen detection and response system, in many cases, the alerts that they get are something like, hey, listen, you got an endpoint here that has a suspicious activity, you should check that out, right? Where you get the lead of what happened, and it basically detects many cyber threats, and solutions do a great job in that, but they lack to give you enough context on how to respond, which is what we call the what, the who, and the how, or to be more precisely, what kind of malware family is it, what process in memory initiated this suspicious network connection, and so on and so forth. So the way that, the ideal way to investigate an incident today or a machine would be in many cases to analyze the memory of the machine, right? But the problem is, and this is really the main challenge today in the modern security operations center, is that you can't really scale a deep investigation, especially memory analysis, but any kind of deep malware analysis, deep incident response is very, very hard to scale without conducting any manual work. Since you have probably hundreds or even thousands of alerts, very hard to dive into each and every one of them. In addition, maybe it's important to mention that even if you got this initial detection or initial alert about, let's say, a suspicious endpoint that connects to an IP in China, and your AV or your EDR already blocked it, you might have still some residue of or traces of malicious code still running in memory. So the memory, the volatile memory of machines is really where the truth begins and the truth ends, as the way we see it at least. So we talked about the challenges, but diving into how we believe that we can solve these challenges. So the first thing is really to talk about genetic malware analysis, which is the basis of every single feature product that we provide, right? And to explain about genetic malware analysis in a nutshell, we have this philosophy that instead of analyzing files by looking at their behavior, meaning trying to figure out what they do, we're trying to figure out what are the origins of a specific file or a specific threat. So, for example, if you have a file that doesn't behave badly or suspiciously, but it shares code with, let's say, the Chinese government or the authors of Emotet, then you know that this is bad, right? So this is really the philosophy in a nutshell. And this is possible to implement because of the very simple fact that software is evolutionary, right? I'm sure that's not news for you that every software developer and also every malware author likes to reuse code and not write things from scratch. This is a very simple and common phenomenon. And using that fact, this really enables us to detect these origins and these genetic connections to other files and other threats. And to speak about it technically, like how does genetic malware analysis works, just to remind everybody or introduce everybody. So we basically break down files into thousands of small pieces of code, right? And using this extraction of pieces of code, which we call genes, by the way, really making the analogy to the genetic world. After breaking down the file to thousands of small genes, we compare each and every piece of code to our huge database of pieces of code from many different software and malware. And in the end, you get this very deep understanding about the origins of every tiny fragment of code in a specific file. So in a sense, or in short, it's really identifying code reuse and code similarities on a very, very large scale, very fast, and very accurate. And also in a very granular size. So this is really the underlying technology that we call genetic malware analysis, that, as I mentioned before, is really the basis of everything that we do, including also the new feature that we're going to introduce today. Now, when we work with many different enterprise organizations in the past, we experienced something very interesting. So today we offer a cloud-based malware analysis platform we call Intezer Analyze that basically enables security teams to automatically investigate any alert that they get and get this reverse engineer level insight for any file they might encounter with. However, as mentioned before, working with several enterprise organizations, most of them are very, very big ones, we saw something very interesting. Many of the alerts that they get are not about a specific file or a specific process, right? But usually it's for entire machines. For example, the most common alerts are about endpoints communicating with a suspicious IP, right? Usually it comes even from the firewall. So in this case, you're not sure about what file, process, or malicious code caused the problem to begin with. So we really wanted to accommodate that use case and enable our clients to automatically scan and investigate entire machines, not just single files, using genetic malware analysis. And really, this is why I'm super excited to introduce you to our new feature that we call endpoint analysis. And endpoint analysis is a tool that allows you to quickly triage and investigate live machines, basically by scanning every single process, module, every tiny fragment of code that is running on a certain computer with our genetic malware analysis platform. So either on demand or automatically with the right integrations, you can perform this super sophisticated reverse engineer level memory analysis to identify the root problem of an incident, right? And yet again, you can detect even a small fragment of malicious code that is running on that endpoint. So really automating memory analysis at scale, this is what it's all about. And the best part is, and I'm going to actually demonstrate it live, but you're going to see how lightweight and fast this tool can get. And maybe one last thing to mention before we dive into the demonstration. I have to make it clear that we're not talking about some sort of AV replacement or an EDR system. We're talking about an on-demand endpoint analysis solution that if you have any kind of suspicious endpoint, you can just scan it very easily with that tool without any installation and without any of the complex deployment that usually real-time protection systems require. This is really for your incident response and security operations to accelerate your day-to-day incident response. Yeah, so what I wanted to do now before explaining how does this tool fit into the more, let's say, larger picture, and talking about integrations and so on, I just wanted to show this feature live and show you a live demonstration of it. So I'll just pull this up, just a second, please. So the first step of using our endpoint analysis feature is running our scanner on a specific machine. So this is basically a simple EXE program that you can download. Soon I'll show you how. And then what it will do, it will basically scan every module and every single process that is running on a certain computer. So I'll just run this on my machine using my demo API key. And I can show you that once it runs and shows you the progress of scanning the memory of the machine. Let's see how it looks like in the task manager. So yeah, so this is the process. You can see it. Well, the CPU consumption is really, really low, as well as the memory consumption. usually it takes more from the memory, but the CPU consumption is really low, so you can be, let's say, worry-free to just scan this even in quite sensitive machines and endpoints. Now, in the background, what it does, this is more for the technical audience in the crowd. So it really scans every single executable page in the memory of the machine. So we're going down in a very, very granular way to detect even a small fragment of code that is running. As you saw, most scans take about maybe maybe 2-3 minutes, 5 minutes, tops 10 minutes in most cases. And in the second scan or the third scan of the same machine, you'll see it decrease dramatically even more. So in order to see the result of the scanning, I'll just take the URL and then paste it into my web browser. So I already have it ready-made, so let me show you how it looks like. Yeah, so I'm going full screen here so you can see my browser window better. So what you can see here is basically the response or the report of the endpoint analysis that I've just conducted. Now in this case, it's my computer, so I have no malware apparently, but it's actually, I do have quite a lot of malware in my machine, but they don't currently run. So really, this is also illustrates that we are talking about active code that is currently running in a machine. It doesn't scan your hard disk or something like that, but only the volatile memory. So what you can see here is very, very cool. On the left-hand side, you can see every single item, process, module that was scanned with our scanning tool. And once you click on a certain item or module, on the right-hand side, you can see the genetic analysis of that specific item, right? So for instance, you can see here that this is a trusted module that was actually, it's a DLL that was loaded under the PowerPoint process. So really, using the process tree, you can understand like the memory hierarchy of what you're looking at now. And in the, in this section, in the code reuse section, this is really the traditional Intezer view, right? To see the genetic analysis of that specific a module. Now, this is a clean machine, right? No threats. You can see here that there is no malware detected, only trusted modules and a few things that were classified as unique, which are mostly modules and processes that we don't have any large similarity to in our database, which that makes sense, and in many machines you have proprietary software, things that are not commonly seen and even not similar to something that was commonly seen. So this is why this computer was classified as clean. Now, this is very cool, right? Because think about it, like instead of using volatility, recall, spending hours to analyze the memory of a machine, you get a very clear understanding just in a few minutes. So even having the verdict of, hey, listen, this is clean, this is fine, is really, really valuable when you're talking about the scale of the amount of alerts that as a security team you need to deal with every day. Now let's go to something more interesting. So this is not my machine, thankfully, but this is a scan, an endpoint analysis that was executed on an infected machine, as you can see. So let me open a few things here. So you have also obviously, even in an infected machine, you have many different trusted modules, right? Things from the operating system, DLLs that are completely not infected, and that's great. However, in this specific machine, and you can even filter out only the malicious items that were found. we can see that there are 3 items, 3 modules that were detected with our scanner that also share code with Emotet, right? So let's look at them one by one. So in this case, in this item, you can see that this is the actual process called cofire.exe, right? And we can even see that there are 2 different modules that are injected in memory under that process. So if I were to click on one of them, you can see that it shares even more code and more genes with Emotet. Now I want to go back and explain what we've just saw. So this is the actual process, right? cofire.exe. And we can see it shares only quite a tiny bit of code with Emotet. And all the rest of the code is completely unique and was never seen before. Now, this is a very big indication this is a probably packed file, right? So it only shares a few pieces of code with Emotet, but all the rest is encrypted, right? It is completely packed. But once it runs and injected the actual payload into memory, we can see that the true nature of this threat is revealed. We can see that it shares 50% code with Emotet. And you can see even how many genes are shared with each threat family. In this case, 105 genes were shared with Emotet, right? Let's now look on the other detected injected module. So in this case, well, this is obviously a full Emotet payload, which was in addition to the module that we've just saw. Now, for the ones of you who are not familiar with our current offering and our current product, which is, by the way, you can use it completely for free. We have a community edition. We're going to talk about it soon. But for the ones who are not as much as familiar with our product, during the endpoint analysis scan, or I'm sorry, using the endpoint analysis report, you can do exactly the same as you did before with single files, meaning you can dive into a malware family, see what it is, see every single related sample for that connection, even dive in and understand what are the exact code similarities that were detected, and so on and so forth. So really, we just tried to get this holistic view of an entire machine, but still under the same concept of genetic analysis. Now, showing you a few other things that might be very useful for you. So yet again, not only we also do the code reuse as the same as we do with our current file analysis platform, but also we can show you the reuse of strings and show if a certain file shared a few strings with another malware sample or another malware family, which can be very helpful for IOC extraction, understanding how do I sign this threat to avoid it in the future, and so on and so forth. So I wanted to show you a few other features, but before that, I just want to stress out the business value here, right? So in a few minutes, we really automated a very deep memory analysis of an entire machine. And I think that the biggest challenge in analyzing memory today is really filtering out all the legitimate files and legitimate modules you can see, so you can focus on the really interesting stuff, right? And in this case, and in the previous case I showed you as well, eliminating all the modules that share code with something that is legit, it is really amazing, because in memory, nothing keeps the original hash. So you can't really cross-reference the hash value online, let's say in VirusTotal, you can't check the hash during a memory analysis operation. But looking at the actual code and see the similarities here, you can just filter out all the uninteresting stuff and only focus on the unique, the interesting, and the malicious parts that were detected. So before we move forward, a few other cool stuff to see here as well. So for every item or module that was detected, that was found, not only we can see the process tree, the code reuse, string reuse, but also you can see, you can also extract IOCs from that sample. In this case, an IOC could be a string, or you can take the hashes, SSD, and other, more of the metadata of the file itself. But the best way to extract an IOC would be actually to use our Yara extraction feature. You can actually automatically generate Yara rules from modules that were detected in memory and then use it for hunting, for future detection, and in general, just as an IOC for any future use. So this is really helpful for actually knowing how to respond to a certain threat. Also, one of the very convenient things you can do is download the module that was detected. Let's say this is a payload that was injected in memory. It's quite hard to run volatility, do a memory image, dump the module, and so on and so forth. So here you can just click the download button, and that's basically it. So it's very, very simple to operate. Great. So before we move forward, or do you have maybe anything to add?
Yeah, maybe I will elaborate two more things. So you discussed about how we focus the users on the relevant modules and the relevant files. I want to emphasize that even during the scan, we even filter some modules or files that are really known by hash, and we want really to accelerate the scan and to make it really more efficient. And another thing I want to mention, in the process tree, we have a new feature that released maybe yesterday, and you can see here. So in the upcoming days, you will have also the command line output of the process, which is really valuable to understand more context about the process. So I hope you will find it interesting as well. And that's all from my side for now.
Great, thank you for your comments. We've seen that there are a few questions, and that's great. We're going to address them all in the end, and also in addition, a few other questions that we received before the webinar. So let's go back to our presentation just a sec. Yeah, so I know that I showed you a very simple case of just running an exe file, seeing the report on the web interface, which is a very manual use case, right? This is very good if you have, like, let's say a technician from a third-party vendor coming in and you want to check his computer before you let him connect to the network, or other, more manual needs. That's great. However, the broader picture here is really that we wanted to automate memory analysis and deep investigation on a huge scale, not really on a manual side of things, but on a huge scale. So really the whole idea is that you get so many alerts from your existing security security systems, whether it's like firewalls, EDRs, the amount of security tools and types of security tools we can talk about it will take us too much time, but you know what I'm saying. so many different alerts in your SIM every day. And the whole idea is that once you get these alerts, it automatically sends it to our system for this deep investigation. So in the end, no matter if you are dealing with a few dozens of alerts every day or thousands of alerts every day, you get a very deep reverse engineer level insights for any kind of incident. And the architecture works as such. Every alert that you get into the SIM is automatically sent to our system. If it's a file, then you can either do a hash lookup or just send the suspicious file for analysis. If it's an alert that is attached to a certain endpoint, for example, an alert about a suspicious IP or a suspicious machine name, then we deploy our scanner automatically to perform this memory analysis. Now, what you get back, both from the file analysis and the endpoint analysis, is an enriched alert into your SIM that gives you answers. Really, it just gives you answers and not more questions, which is, for example, is it a false positive alert or not? Did we really find any malicious code running in that machine? What kind of malware family is it? Not only saying whether something is good or bad, but really telling you, hey, this is emotet, as we mentioned before. How do I respond, and so on and so forth. So on a broader sense of things, you would want to automate this whole process of analyzing the memory at a very, very large scale. Now, I'm sure you will have questions about how we deploy the scanner and how we make it automatic, but in the end, just to make sure I was clear enough, there is no, the whole idea is to deploy the scanner on demand per alert and not install an agent or something like that in your whole environment. This is not what we're trying to do. So obviously, you know, the demonstration was very specific, but having this tool you have so many different use cases to scan every single item in your computer's memory that you can think of. So I really encourage you to think of even more use cases and what your organization would feel that is important for you. So the last part that we wanted to talk about is really how do you actually use this, or how can you get your hands on the scanner and on an API key in order to perform the analysis. So actually it's also for free. So until now, as I mentioned before, we had this free community edition for file analysis. You got, I think, 10 files per day for free. It was very important for us to do the same thing in the endpoint feature as well, so that everybody can just try it out without even talking to us, right? So you can feel free to sign up to our community edition. If you're already a community user, you can now see a new button named Scan Endpoint. Maybe I'll show it to you just a sec. Yeah, so you can see just a button, a Scan Endpoint in your top bar, where you can just download the scanner. You find some more information, FAQ, which can help you get started. And if you don't know how to get an API key, you can just go to your account details, and then you can see the API key here, which is used to scan your endpoints as well. In order to view the results, you just click on the history page, and then let me show you. You click on the history page here, and then endpoint analysis, and here you can see all the previous scanned machines you used the endpoint analysis for. So really, I encourage you. It's completely for free. You get one free scan per day. But if you want to try it out more thoroughly, just contact us. We can help you out. Uh, and in addition to the questions that we're about to answer for this webinar, obviously you can feel free to reach out to us if you have any additional questions. But to begin with your questions, we'd be happy to answer any questions from the audience here. Or have you received any questions, I think, from the attendees?
Yeah, we just got some really interesting questions and some more questions that we got even earlier. So the first one is, does Intezer Scanner support Windows 10 in the commercial edition? So you will find also the list of operation systems that we support in the page that Itai just showed you, but in general, we support Windows operation, Windows 10, and even before. And the beauty of this scanner is it's really not dependent on the operation system. So just in contrast to other memory analysis tools, which is more complicated for the backward compatibility. So here it's really easy to use on Windows Desktop and Windows Server as well. Another question, let me see. The original eggs of the scanner, does it require admin privileges? And does it load any kernel mode drivers? So the answer that we wrote in the chat that yes, the scanner requires admin in order to collect the memory model, and it executes in user mode just to make the things easier. So it doesn't load any kernel mode drivers.
Yeah, and this is really from many much feedback from our customers that they don't want to get blue screens, even for investigation. And obviously, I've used volatility and recall in the past. It's a challenge in that aspect. So we try to, in one hand, do this very deep memory inspection, but in user mode. So you won't need to fear of any kind of blue screen.
Great, thank you, Itai. Another question is, what do we collect from the endpoint, and what about my privacy? Itai, do you want to elaborate here?
Yes, it's also a question that we got from a few of our clients. Like, listen, we have very sensitive documents currently displaying in the computers, and we don't want to send any kind of this private data in the cloud, which makes 100% perfect sense. However, this memory scanner and really our whole technology only cares about binary code, executable binary code and machine code. This is why we collect only the memory modules, code injections, processes, not anything related to the data itself or any kind of like data sections. For instance, we won't receive any kind of documents or any kind of other data, just two simple things: the modules themselves, the binary code, and also some metadata such as the process name and so on and so forth, everything that you can see in the report, in the web interface report as well.
Great, and I will just add to this that we collect the binaries from memory. So if you have packed files on the file system, then of course we will collect the loaded memory modules, so we will get the actual payload, which is really common in malware. For next question is how should I install this agent? And another question is, do we still need some orchestration layer to deploy the scanner? So just to emphasize, the scanner is not agent, as Itai mentioned. It's not a replacement for any AV, just on-demand scanner to help you to investigate alert or suspicious endpoint. And definitely orchestration layer will be very helpful in deploying the scanner, but there are some more automation tools or scripts that can be added to some of your SIEMs or other tools. And what we are doing as part of our customer success with our customers is actually to build the exact use case and to adjust it to the customer. But definitely, to be clear, orchestration layer will be really helpful to automate this process, but it's not the only option. Itai, do you want to add here something?
Well, most organizations, we work with them in order to fulfill this automated use case. So obviously there is some kind of existing orchestration layer that needs to be existing in an organization, but usually it's very easy because we use the existing tools and solutions of deployment for organizations, and that's how we manage to deploy the scanner on demand per alert. It can be either a source system, for example, Phantom or Demisto or something like that, or it can be a more traditional deployment mechanism such as SCCM or even PS exec and so on and so forth.
Great, thank you, Itai. Another question, we have a lot of questions and we are really happy for your interest and thank you for that. What is the typical total size of information collected from endpoint? So as we said before, we really try to optimize this process, and most of the time, and the typical total size is around 100 megabyte. And as Itai mentioned, the first scan can be a bit bigger, but usually it's even less than 100 mega, and we want it to be as efficient as possible.
Yeah, so just to emphasize, usually when you conduct a memory analysis, you need to dump a full memory image, which can, be even 16 gigs because it dumps the whole memory offline. In our case, we try to do it much more intelligently. We only care about the actual code in memory and not anything related to data, which is, most of the storage inside the memory dumps. And in addition, we don't take the same module twice. So if you scan the same machine or you scan a machine in the same organization, usually only probably 10% of the actual processes that are running in a computer are actually collected. So that's why it's fairly small compared to other memory analysis systems.
Great, and I think that's all the questions. If you have any more questions, we will be happy to answer.
I think that I see another question here, which is Intezer Analyze a sandbox?
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
So the short answer is no, but the long answer is we're actually the opposite of a sandbox, because a sandbox tries to figure out how a certain file behaves, and we actually even don't monitor that at all. We only care about one single thing, which is the actual binary code, and is it similar to something that we've already seen in the past. So this is why we operate very, very differently. And especially when we're talking about the endpoint analysis solution, it's on a live machine, right? It's not like you run a file you detonate a file in a sandbox. No, you're actually scanning a live machine that you suspect that is infected, right? So it's a very, very different thing. Although both are related to analysis and investigation, but in a completely different manner. I hope that's clear enough. Great. So unless you have any other questions, guys, we were really excited to show you this demonstration. It's a feature that we worked so hard to producing it to both our clients, but also the whole security community. As we mentioned before, we really felt like the world needs a better solution to conduct something as important as memory analysis, right? And this is what we really tried to do. I expect that it will be even more awesome in the future. We'll have more features and more things that can help you during investigations. But really, we see it as so substantial in our product line, in our offering, set of offering. And this is why it was really important also for me personally, as the CEO of the company, to present it to you today. Last thing maybe I wanted to say is thank you all for joining. I really encourage you to just try it out in our Few Community Edition. In addition, we're going to upload the recording of this webinar in addition to a short summary of that webinar. So you can just see the highlights there. And we look forward to talk to you, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and feel free to share your feedback with us, and I will be happy to improve the product and to add more things according to your feedback. It's really important.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.